In today's video, we're going to turn a jazz drum solo into a breakbeat style drum groove and turn that into a song using just our ears and no theoretical knowledge whatsoever. But first, we gotta make it sound good. So here's a song called Foibles of Fabio by the Nick Gaumont Octet, and we've got a basic mix for it going already. Now most jazz mixers would leave it as it is now and leave it sounding as natural as possible.
As natural as possible.
Now that's fine if you want to impress your grandma, but to me it would sound weak if I left it this way. If you were in a room with this guy, you'd be grooving and bopping your head, but we're not getting that right now. In real life, it's a lot louder and more aggressive than what most jazz recordings would leave you to believe. So how do we make it slam? We're going to use easy mode today and just slap on the most aggressive compressor known to mankind.
Easy mode.
This is a JST gain reduction. It's supposed to be for vocals, but who cares? Here's what it sounds like. So you can see that the sleigh is at the maximum, which that along with your input gain will be how much compression you're getting, and you can see that we're getting a lot by how much the meter was moving. We also increased the body to give it a bit of fatness and turned on the lo-fi as well. So now that we've brought the target age demographic down from deceased to 79, it's still jazz after all. Let's have some fun with this. I don't know about you, but I hear a groove in there, so let's turn that into a song. So I have a bass line in mind already, and I've printed our drum solo with all our processing on, so let's see if we can get those two to work together. Here's the bass line that I wanted to work with. So the first few bars of the drum solo already sound like a beat, so let's see what happens when we just line them up together and see if it works as is. Most of it works, but towards the end of the bass line, the drums kind of get off track a bit. And I want the drum groove to lead back into itself once the bass line restarts. So let's chop it up and repeat some parts to help us get back to the top. I won't show you all of this. It'd be like watching someone else watch paint dry. Here's what I ended up with. If you do this with your own material, you'll probably have to do some time stretching to get your material to work together. Next, we just have to tweak the sound a little bit to make it more palatable. We're mainly going to focus on some EQ moves in order to help emphasize the kick and snare and tame the hi-hat a little bit. And maybe some dynamics processing to help control the pokiness. Here's without EQ. So I want to emphasize the kick and snare while taming a bit of the high end. So here's with EQ. Gonna compress it a bit more just to bring it together. And I wanted to get some more attack and a bit less sustain, so here's that. Let's hear it in context, so here's before. And now with all those changes.
this program for a special news bulletin. Breaking news! It appears that some idiot is mixing drums in mono. We have a reporter live on the scene for an exclusive interview.
It appears you're mixing drums in mono, sir.
Yeah, so?
How do you explain such crimes against humanity?
For the sake of being contrarian. When have you ever heard drums in mono? Besides on old-ass recordings? Never. Call me a generic millennial snowflake, but I want to be special. There are some practical reasons for this too. The bass is in stereo, and we want to keep it out of the way of that. We also want to keep it out of the way of the other stereo instruments like the piano and percussion. Plus, this drum beat is so damn cool. I want to bring that out and make it the focal point. Is that such a sin? So now you're at the point where you pretty much have a finished song, but you still think it kind of sucks, because it's really obvious that you just copy-pasted the same thing a bunch of times. So this sticks out even more because you're using an actual recorded performance rather than MIDI programmed drums, which would allow you to tweak it and add variation to your heart's content. So here are two tricks that I like to use to spice it up a bit when things start to get too repetitive. Number one is to tune the drums differently for different sections. Now in real life, this would be a pain in the ass. But luckily, we don't have to deal with real life. So in this case, when the full groove starts, I want it to feel like everything is dropping down and settling in. So during the intro, we're going to tune the drums up with the warp function on to retain the current timing. And then when the bass comes in for the first time, we're going to tune it back down to the original. Or you could even go lower if you want, but I preferred the original here. So later on, there's a break, and when the groove comes back in after that break, the whole band modulates up. So to follow that, we're going to tune the drums up too in order to add a sense of urgency. So here's the very beginning. Notice that the whole drum kit is transposed up one semitone. So here's just the drums at the beginning. And here's where we were looking at before with the groove. So it's one semitone up. The part right before the groove is actually tuned up by 5 semitones. Compared to the groove at the original tuning. Number 2, we can add interest with EQ changes. So in the intro, we can add a filter sweep up to make it sound like we're waking up from something. So here, we're not going to filter back up completely right away. We're going to save that for when the groove kicks in. So that way you'll know that, okay, right now we're at the main idea, and that groove is just going to smack you in the face. Watch the EQ as the filter sweeps up, and notice that it doesn't sweep up all the way. Then the next part is still not fully all the way up. And when the groove kicks in, that's when we completely open everything up. So let's listen to the whole intro with everything playing. Here's the part after the break where the whole band tunes up, and notice that the drums are tuned up by 1 semitone too. So I found that there are many benefits of working this way using recordings as opposed to writing things down or using MIDI programming. Number 1, you need very little technical knowledge and almost no theoretical knowledge whatsoever. So I've studied music a lot and know a lot about theory, but I never bothered to figure out what meter this groove is in or what key all these parts are in. And as far as technical knowledge goes, all you really need to know is how to copy and paste and transpose or warp, and that you can learn in about 5 minutes. Number 2, you react to what you hear and you work almost exclusively with your ear. So you don't need to know why it's good, you just know that it is good. Number 3, there is an instant feedback loop. So you don't have to write it down and spend all this time with people getting them to play it in order to figure out that it sucks. You can put stuff together, make a change, and then you'll know instantly whether you like it or not, and you'll be listening to the final product the whole time. Number 4, it adds continuity. When you're recycling music from within the same song, whether your listeners realize it or not, there will be a sense of continuity and of internal logic that you will just feel. And this also applies to album too. The song that we are working on today is made up of parts from 2 or 3 different songs, and it was created to fill the gap between 2 songs that didn't necessarily flow super well together. And so repeating ideas throughout the album will give legitimacy to those ideas, and it will help those ideas get stuck in your listener's head. And isn't that what we all want? And number 5, it's more fun, at least to me, than programming instruments or writing stuff down. I like this way of working because you get to listen to someone actually playing the whole time you're working, and you don't have to worry about a billion synth parameters and tweaking all the velocities to make it sound like a human playing. Using recorded material of actual humans playing is actually a positive constraint because it forces you to be more creative than if you had infinite options at your disposal. The material you're working with can only do certain things and be stretched so far, so it's up to you to figure out what all of those things are in order to extract the maximum value from the music that you're working with. So that really changes the way you think, because you can't use the same writing tricks that you use all the time to get yourself out of trouble. So if you limit yourself in this way to say only using material from 2 or 3 tunes, then you'll force yourself to think differently and to come up with different solutions to problems that you have when you're writing. So I hope you give this method a shot and explore different ways of recycling your own music. You're likely to find out pretty quickly that you can come up with some really interesting music and unique soundscapes. In future videos, we'll check out what the rest of this song sounds like, as it was made in the same way except using recordings of the full band playing. My name is Nick Gaumont. Milk your music.